Welcome back, every Bendy Body, to the Bendy Bodies Podcast with your host and founder, Dr. Linda Bluestein, the Hypermobility MD. Today, we are going to be talking with Lauren Vasko. Lauren was actually my very first patient when I first opened my medical practice, Hypermobility MD, back in 2017. Lauren is 25 years old and became a patient of mine over 7 years ago. She has been diagnosed with EDS, POTS, and multiple comorbidities. She describes me as playing a pivotal role in her healing journey and helping her get to where she is today. She went to Marquette University to get a degree in entrepreneurship and marketing. She worked as a marketing manager for 2 years after college and decided she needed a change. In July 2024, she moved to Nairobi, Kenya to work as an art teacher. I am so excited to share Lauren's story today, as I think you will find it really inspiring and empowering. As always, this information is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personalized medical advice. Be sure to stick around until the very end so you don't miss any of our special hypermobility hacks. Let's get started. Well, I'm so excited to get the chance to talk with Lauren today. And Lauren, are you all the way in Kenya right now?
I am, yes.
Oh my gosh. My geography is so bad, but you probably get the prize for being the farthest away guest.
Yay!
I'm so excited. So can you start out by telling people how you and I first met?
Yes, absolutely. I think it just started with my mom was researching on Facebook different doctors we could visit. I was having a lot of health issues, and she stumbled upon your name, and people were saying, like, I booked an appointment with her. Like, I'm hoping to see her. Has anybody seen her yet? And, nobody had yet. And so we got an appointment, scheduled it, and had an appointment with you. That turned out to be your first appointment ever. We learned years later, but that was kind of the process of how we found you and came across you.
Yeah, you probably, I didn't want to tell you at the time, but I know I did tell you not long after, I think. By the way, you were my first patient for my clinic for EDS. I had been doing anesthesia for many, many years, but that was very different. And so of course you hold a very, very special place in my heart. I actually started to tear up as soon as I started to talk to you. So yeah, you will always be very special to me because of that. So anyway, so I will, here, I'm going to grab a tissue. Okay. I knew that would happen, but I didn't think that would happen at the very beginning. Okay. So what can you tell us? What do you feel comfortable sharing about your illness? And basically, why was your mom even looking for somebody like me in the first place?
Yeah. So at age 16, I remember doing the PACER test. And I remember just being so far behind everybody. And it used to be something that I was pretty good at. And I thought, what is happening? Like, why am I the slowest girl in my gym class? And it just didn't really make sense to me. And I remember turning to my friend and I said, like, are you out of breath too? And she's like, no, I'm just not that fast. Because we were the slowest ones. And I was like, something doesn't make sense here. Like, I don't understand why I'm so slow with running and why I feel so exhausted and out of breath. And we started kind of looking into it. I noticed I was just like so lightheaded and dizzy throughout my day, especially when I was standing up. And so we decided to book an appointment with, I think it was a neurologist. I don't even remember who we ended up seeing. Or maybe a cardiologist. That might make more sense. But he diagnosed me with POTS, and I didn't actually have the tilt table test at that point. He just said, based on my symptoms, he did the poor man's tilt table test of just standing up and recording your heart rate. And he said, based on that, like, I surpassed what you needed to qualify for having POTS. And so he said, I can definitely tell you have POTS. And then he did I forget what it's called, but the hypermobility test of like the 9.
The Beighton score?
Yes. So he did that test, passed that one easily as well. And so he's like, okay, I think you also have EDS. And he explained the correlation that typically occurs and said that, we can't know for sure because you need genetic testing, but based on, you having POTS and the Beighton score test, we would diagnose you with EDS. So that's kind of where we left off before I saw you. And then I just had so many other symptoms and problems like in that time period. And we were just trying to figure out what the heck is going on. How do we treat this? And it seemed like the doctor that I had gone to kind of just left me with compression socks, salt tablets, eating lots of salt, drinking lots of water. And those were like his best advice that he could give me. And that just wasn't enough. And so I was later put on medications and everything, but there was still just this big EDS part that we hadn't figured out at all, and what that even meant for me and how it affected other parts of my body. We didn't have that like knowledge at all. Like nobody had told us what that looked like really. So yeah, I think we were just kind of like walking in the dark with everything, and I was just very sick and had GI issues and lots of pain, still having POTS issues. Fatigue was really bad. School, I wasn't able to go to school all the time. Like it wasn't super severe, but I was definitely missing class to go home and rest and just get back on my feet. So that was kind of, I guess, the process of where I was at before meeting you.
So a lot of people will be able to relate to the missing lots of school part. And of course, that is very concerning. How much school were you missing? And were there any things that happened at school that were particularly challenging? Because I know for young people, of course, that can be really problematic.
I would say there were definitely weeks where I would have to go home every day. I feel like I would go in for a few hours and then crash, and I wouldn't be able to be there anymore. So that was a pattern. And it seemed like everybody in my life was trying to like break that pattern of like, no, you have to be there. Like all the teachers at school and all of the administration and like, you can't be doing this. And I was like, I'm not trying to do this. Like I would love to be at school, like learning, being with my friends, like doing what a normal high schooler is doing. But I just wasn't able to. So it was really frustrating. And my mom like understood my opinion and was advocating for me and trying to explain to the school, no, she really can't go in right now. And she, we're not sure what's going on. And everybody just got really frustrated that like, can't you just go to the doctor and find out in one appointment what's wrong with you and what you need to do to treat it? And we're like, no, that's just not the case. And then my junior year of school is when things took a turn for the worse, I would say. And I was in my psychology class and my legs went completely numb. And by the end of the class, everybody's getting up and I knew I couldn't walk. Like I like tapped people next to me and I was like, hi, like I need help. I can't walk. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, my legs are numb. Like I don't know what's happening. And so they got my teacher, and luckily psychology teacher kind of knows what's happening with your body and is able to kind of relate in some ways. And so she was just asking lots of questions and like, okay, like, I don't think you're paralyzed. Like, and so she walked me down to the office, basically, carrying half my weight at least, and got me to my mom, and we didn't know what was happening. My mom took me home, and then I think we ended up going to urgent care that night, but we really didn't know how to handle things or what would cause me to just lose the ability to walk. And I honestly still don't have like a super clear answer of like what did it. Like, I guess we have theories of just different parts of pain conditions kind of causing, I don't know, maybe you can attest to that more, but I don't know. We can't really explain it, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that because that had happened before you came to see me.
Right.
And then at one point you were actually needing to use some additional aids for walking, right? So
yeah, I was in a wheelchair for I think 3 months, and then walker to crutches for 3 more months. Maybe even, I think it was 8 months of between when I lost the ability to walk to when I could walk completely aid-free. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I want to remind people that right now you are in Kenya. And although you might be sitting down, you are able to walk. And like the reason why I'm so happy to talk to you today is, I started this podcast because I was so tired of the narrative of, there's nothing that you can do for EDS. And so I'm just so excited for you to share your story because I feel like it's really empowering for other people to hear a story of resilience like yours and all the hard work that you did in order to get to where you are now. And of course, you mentioned your mom already, who also holds a very special place in my heart. She's so sweet and so incredibly supportive. And of course, I know your dad too. But a lot of people will be able to relate to the school challenges and problems with walking and, being in a place in your life that's really challenging and feels like there's no chance of getting out of it, So I think I'm just so grateful to you for being willing to share your story, because I think a lot of people are really going to be helped by hearing about this.
Yeah, thank you.
So all of that had transpired, and then you came to see me. And tell us more about the course of your illness. Like, after you saw me, I know that the path was not linear, but can you explain to people kind of, what happened? Of course, in my mind, it's more clear when you saw me versus when you hadn't. But can you explain more about the course of things, and how long did it take for you to get better?
Yeah, that's a complex question, because it wasn't linear for sure.
Yeah.
I just remember, now we know this, but I found out that you spent 16 hours studying my case and all my history, which is just amazing. And I'm so grateful that I was the first patient to get that kind of care. But yeah, I think during that conversation, it was a lot of like, you had so many ideas of what we could do. And I was like, which one should we do first? And I was like, ideas? Like, nobody has had ideas for what to do with me and how to treat me. Like, everybody has just kind of been clueless and said to do simple things like eating better, drinking water, sleeping more, like things I was already doing. And so you had ideas, and they weren't opioids. They weren't things that I was very against. They were things that were more natural and were getting at the root cause of what was causing my symptoms. And so it was like, this is a whole new world. Like, I remember I think my mom and my dad may have all cried on the way home, like leaving, just being like, whoa, that was just such a shock to have so many answers and so many ideas of what we could do next. So I remember just you suggesting a lot of vitamins that I could go on, supplements. I think I went on a few prescriptions. I think I came off a few prescriptions that we thought might actually be hurting my treatment. We looked at lifestyle changes of, like, am I on my screen before I go to bed? Am I eating 3 meals a day? Am I eating junk food for my food? Am I hydrating? Am I having electrolytes? Like, all of those things. But it felt like a much more holistic way instead of a condescending way with how some of the other doctors approached it. And it was like, okay, we're going to look at every aspect of your health. And that's what we did. And like, yeah, I have never received care like that. And before I saw you, and still haven't received care like that, after. And so it was great to just have so many options of what we could do. So I remember each appointment, we would kind of come in and discuss what worked, what didn't work, what things we could try next. And it was just like, okay, keep this, get rid of this, move forward, update me, and we'll make decisions from there. And I think we really narrowed down which meds like I was on but didn't need to be on, and which meds were really affecting me in a positive direction. And I remember you always said, if it gives you 5% better quality life, or you feel 5% better, like, that's worth it. And I remember I was just listening to your last podcast for one of your happy hours, and you were mentioning that of like, I think a lot of times we go for like, okay, I want to feel 100% better or 50% better. And it's really doesn't usually typically work like that. And so just shooting for that 5% better is really what we were going for. And so I definitely saw improvement that way.
Yeah, I definitely say that a lot. If there are like 10 different things that each give you 5% improvement, well, now you have 50% improvement. And I know when I was at my worst and having so much pain, one of the mistakes I made was looking for like the one thing that would get me better. And I discovered for myself that it wasn't usually one thing. It was usually a bunch of things. So, and yes, because you were the first person I ever saw, like I combed through every single page of, you guys shared outside records, and I went through every single page, highlighted everything, took tons of notes because, I wanted to be really prepared and really be able to, offer a lot of ideas. And we did have quite a few appointments right over that next, probably the first few years. We had a lot of appointments, right?
Yeah.
And then I feel like it really spaced out because you were not needing, to really talk to me as much. Can you tell us some of so if you're willing to share, some of the low points and how you got past them?
Yeah, I would say it was definitely a challenge, especially in college, and we didn't get to that part yet.
Right.
I mean, maybe I should start with high school. Yeah, high school was really challenging as well. I really struggled with like a lot of friend issues. I was in a wheelchair during high school, and I had friends that would pick me up from class to push me around in my wheelchair, and it was amazing. And I was so grateful that they were willing to do that. And I had friends that bullied me and made fun of me and asked me like, "Why are you making this up?" And didn't understand, didn't care to understand, didn't have any empathy. And in high school, that gets to your core. Like you can't brush it off. Like,
yeah,
I think even as adults, we struggle with that. But especially when you're still like learning and growing and finding your own identity, having somebody make fun of you and tell you that they don't believe that you need to be in a wheelchair is, like debilitating in an emotional sense. But
yeah,
so that was probably one of the most challenging things for me, and something that I just remember lots of nights of just tears and just trying to figure out how to move past that. And then also just nights of not sleeping from the pain. And, in the beginning when that would happen, I would wake up my parents and let them know I'm in, a 10 out of 10 pain right now. Like, can you just sit next to me? And we'd figure out, okay, is this call 911? Is this, go to the emergency room? Is this just sit and wait it out? Like, I remember having those conversations and making those decisions, and we quickly learned that going to the ER was typically not worth it. We typically didn't get any care. Maybe a pain medicine if I was in a lot of pain, that would relieve me for a few hours, but that was typically it. And then I'd also add it to my chart, that it's skeptical. Right. Like they're skeptical that I'm asking for pain meds. So it soon became not worth it. And I remember after, months of that happening, it was like, okay, it's no longer worth waking up my parents. I will just do this alone. I'll wake up in the middle of the night, or it'll wake me up in the middle of the night, the pain will. And I'll just push through it on my own. And I, remember being stuck by the toilet getting sick and, just being in miserable pain from that. And, pain kind of causes that cycle of like your whole body going into a fight or flight kind of response. And so it, became all encompassing when it would happen. So those were some of the hardest times, I think. And then going into college, things started off pretty rocky. I fractured my hip my first semester, and I went to college in Wisconsin, and the sidewalks and roads become ice pretty much in October, maybe November if we're lucky. And I just remember having crutches and walking around, and it took 3 months to figure out that I had fractured my hip. And so that was another struggle of just like, why is this happening to me? Like, I just want to fit in, and I have to have crutches. And the professors ask me every day, did you figure it out yet? And no, I didn't figure it out. I don't know why I have pain. I don't know why I'm on crutches. So that was challenging. And my sophomore year, I hit a really low point and had to medically withdraw from college. And that was due to what we later learned was CCI, which, what does that even stand for anymore? I can't think of it right now.
Yeah. Well, that's actually, that right there, I feel like perfectly synthesizes your situation. Yes. the phrase CCI, but you no longer know what that means. That's beautiful. Yes. Like that's yes. Amazing. You're young and you shouldn't have to know what that means, right? It's cranial-cervical instability. And yes, you had that diagnosis, and that means that your neck is unstable and causes a lot of problems. So yeah, trying to go to college with an unstable neck and a broken hip and all of the other things. Yep. Yeah, for sure. Like so hard.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely, that is out of sight, out of mind now with CCI, because I don't really deal with it anymore. So, but that took me out of college, and we think it was a case of SIBO as well. So that the two of those things really gave me a challenge. So I had to withdraw from school. I think I was out for a year. I think that's right. So yeah, that was really hard to be away from this new community I found. And it was very testing. It was also good timing. I just decided to become a Christian. And so I had this newfound faith. And so right as I was like being told I have these new illnesses and that I'm no longer able to go to school because I was on so many opioids to get through that pain and wasn't able to eat anymore. And so it was I ate very little. And so it was getting very challenging. And so I had to withdraw from school. And I remember coming home and like, okay, like this is a true test of my faith. Like this is the biggest trial I've had. And we're going to dig in. And I have, 8 more hours a day to read my Bible or pray or like watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts. Like I just kind of like took it and ran with it and learned as much as I could about my faith because I knew it'd strengthen me and would make my healing journey more realistic and more, I don't know, meaningful to me. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it is so important taking that whole approach where, you're not just relying on medications, you're not just relying on physical therapy, but you're doing all of these different things. And I think that's why, you were able to overcome so many obstacles. You're obviously an incredibly intelligent and resilient person. You also had incredible support from your family and you just persisted, right? I mean, you just kept trying to figure out, well, what do we do now? What do we do next? And you didn't give up. I think that's the most important thing. And I do want to ask, because I know some people are thinking, oh my God, did she have CCI surgery?
No, I did not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we thought I would. Like, once I got that diagnosis, I think it was like a matter of like, okay, we'll just push off as far as we can. And I think there was speculation of Chiari malformation too, which is also another diagnosis that often comes with surgery. So I really expected that I would have to have the surgery, like, in less than 5 years after being diagnosed. Like that was my kind of like not expectation, but like based on the research I had done, it was like, yeah, that's probably bound to happen. But yeah, I think with what you said, like the physical therapy, medications, I mean, just so many different things played a role into the healing that happened like in my neck. And I'm very, very grateful that I never had to have a surgery. I'm hoping I never will. So
yeah, me too. Because those kinds of surgeries, while they are sometimes absolutely necessary, the consequences can be really significant. So it is huge whenever we can avoid surgery. And yes, you definitely, I recall being recommended by a neurosurgeon. Hopefully it's okay that I share this. I'm trying to make it so that you share more of your health stuff so that I'm not revealing something that you don't want me to reveal. And of course, if I do, you please let me know and we'll cut that part out. But it was recommended that you have surgery at one point, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was. It was trying to push it off and then see.
Or at least like, we think that this is probably going to need to happen, but let's try doing physical therapy for a little bit longer first and stuff. So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing. What do you think are the most critical things for your success?
Yeah, I thought about this before coming on the podcast too. And it's like, oh, there are so many things. This is probably the biggest one, I think, and it's probably maybe the most surprising, but I think just getting out of the victim mentality. I think once you're in it, it's like climbing out of like a hole. Like it's just so hard to kind of get out of this mentality of like, I'm just stuck with this illness and like, I will only get worse from here and I'm gonna have to have a surgery. So might as well get it now. Or like kind of escalating the situation at times. And so I think I really appreciate your approach of we are going to do the most conservative option first. If we have to go up the ladder in a sense to more invasive procedures, medications, whatever it may be, we will. But like we're going to start with the most simple, basic changes that, don't cause more side effects. And so that involved more like holistic approaches. And so, but I think there was like a corner turned at some point where I was like, I'm not stuck in this. Like I have a way out of this and we're going to figure it out. And I think like you will only achieve what you think is possible. So if you think you're stuck and you're never going to get better, you won't. Like if you don't think that's possible. And so, I think, when I saw other people supporting me and wanting that for me, I started to believe it for myself. And so I think that was one of the biggest things. In a more practical sense, I think there were certain medications I needed at certain times. Sure. And I know low-dose naltrexone was one that worked really well for me. It helped with pain and headaches. Does it help with fatigue? I feel like it helps me with fatigue.
It can.
Does? Okay.
It certainly can, yeah.
Okay. And I was on that for, I don't know, at least 5 years was my guess. And I remember a day I came to your office and I was like, I don't really want to be on this one anymore. Like it's kind of a pain for me to take. I have a thing where I can't really swallow pills that easily. I think it's more of a mental block than anything, but I would have to pour the liquid medicine and that was hard for traveling and stuff. And so I was like, I'm kind of done with this one. Can I try getting off of it? And I remember I tried and I didn't notice much of a difference, but at one point it was something that really saved me. And so I think that's something to consider in your healing journey of like, okay, there's a time and a place for different meds and different treatments. And sometimes it's good to test if you can come off things too, if your body just needed that. And once it got the strength, then you're able to get off those things. So that was one that definitely helped. I remember we added a bunch of vitamins like vitamin D. We learned that I had the MTHFR mutation. And so I went on folate. I started taking vitamin D, vitamin C, multivitamin. So I think we kind of started those around the same time. So I think I noticed the difference with adding all of those. And that might be something that a lot of people have already done. But if you haven't, that might be something to try. Trying to think what else. I went gluten-free. I think that helped a lot with my stomach pain. I wasn't diagnosed with celiac disease. We learned that I definitely didn't have it. But it seems like I was having more symptoms after having gluten. And so cutting that out definitely helped my stomach pain. I don't know. I'm trying to think what else. If you know of anything that you remember, feel free to share it.
I'm so glad you talked about like specific things at specific times because I'm remembering a specific thing that happened. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about something that you would never think would be related to EDS, but that happened to you. And if you're willing to talk about it, we'll talk about that after we take a quick break. We'll be right back. This episode of the Bendy Bodies Podcast is brought to you by EDS Guardians, paying it forward in the Ehlers-Danlos syndromes community, patient to patient for the common good. I am proud to serve on the inaugural board of directors for EDS Guardians, a small charity with a big mission and a big heart. Now seeking donors, volunteers, and partners. Patient advocacy and support programs available now. Travel grants launching in 2025. Learn more, shop for a cause at their swag store, and join the revolution at edsguardians.org. Thank you so much for listening to Bendy Bodies. We really appreciate your support. It really helps the podcast when you like, subscribe, and comment on YouTube, and follow, rate, and review on all audio platforms. This helps us reach so many more people and spread the information to everyone. Thank you so much again, and enjoy the rest of the episode. This is your podcast, so I want it to be as helpful as possible. In the description of this podcast is a link to a survey to collect your feedback. If you contribute, you will be eligible to receive an appreciation gift. We will be selecting one lucky person for a bronze edu-coaching session valued at $275. Please see the link for details. Okay, we're back with Lauren, and I want to hear from Lauren about the most unusual thing that you thought probably would not be connected to EDS, but turned out actually to have a connection? Was there something along the way that was like, oh, you mean that could actually impact how my symptoms are? Like, do you know what I'm thinking of? Or
I do. So my sophomore year was not a good year medically already. But I decided to, I guess it was a few days before school started, I decided to see a podiatrist because I had ingrown toenails, and I was like, he'll just look at them, like, we'll do the surgery another day. I go in there and he's like, let's just do it today. Like, you're starting school in 3 days. It takes like 2 days to heal. Like, if that, like, it's perfect timing. Because otherwise you're going to have to wear flip-flops like for a little bit. And, he's like, it'll just be easier. So we did the procedure right then and there. All went well, no issues. And then they said that the numbing would wear off within a few hours, and it had been 3 days and the numbing still hadn't worn off. And so we decided to call the office and say, hey, is this normal? They were very concerned. So I came back in, and it was extending like into my upper, like, I don't know how far, but like past my toes, like into the upper part of my foot as well.
Wow.
And it was like, I couldn't feel, like I was tripping because I couldn't feel my feet, like where they were walking. So it was like quite severe numbness that was still there. And so they were just kind of like, this is unusual. We've never had this happen before. And I remember going into the procedure, my mom was like, we need to tell them you have EDS. And I was like, it's just an ingrown toenail procedure, Mom. Like, it'll go fine. Let's not make a big deal, like, out of something that probably won't have an impact. And then at the second appointment, my mom definitely spoke up that I have EDS and this could be causing any issues. And so, yeah, I went on, and then I had an infection as well. And so I went on an antibiotic. And basically no antibiotics were working. The infection was continuing to spread. Yeah, I won't get too graphic, but it just wasn't pretty. And I think in 2 months, I went through 8 antibiotics that none of them worked. And it just, okay, didn't, like 3 days later, did it work? Nope. Okay, next one. And we just cycled through each one. Nobody explained to me like the consequences this can have on your GI system until my mom and I started doing research, and we're like, nobody told me to take a probiotic. Nobody told me that this is like the worst idea ever to go on 8 antibiotics that close together. Like, and so I was really frustrated because it's like, you should be thinking of my whole health, not just this little toe infection. And so, it was hard because then it's like, okay, so who do we go to now with all the consequences of another doctor's work that he's a specialist for, And so, it got complicated. And, yeah, like we mentioned earlier, this caused the SIBO that I had, or we think I had. And that was one of the reasons that literally took me out of school, from an ingrown toenail infection all the way to SIBO. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember talking to you and realizing when you were describing, this is back, when you were a sophomore in college, and realizing that you had had all those courses of antibiotics and no probiotics and GI symptoms. I was like, wait, this is probably related. Let's do something about this. And so that's where too, like, anything that happens in a person's body can have so many ramifications that I think so often people don't think about. And, how can you, if you have a 5-minute appointment or a 10-minute appointment, like, you're not even going to mention that you had toenail surgery, right? So,
right.
Yeah. So that's where I'm so grateful to you and to your mom for being so good about following up with me and sharing, like, filling out the forms. You always filled out the forms on time, and like, said what was transpiring between appointments, because really you're trying to do detective work, right? So you're trying to figure out, like, what are some of the various different pieces of the puzzle? And like you said, needs definitely change over time. So, for a while you might need one certain thing, but it's not like you need that forever. So I also think it's really important how you how you knew what to share and how you knew that, okay, well, just because I have to do this now doesn't mean I have to do it forever.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have thoughts about what some of the other big things were that helped you on your healing journey? And then I next want to ask you after that, what you wish you had done differently. So you can start with whichever one you want, because I know we already kind of talked a little bit about what you think were the critical things for your success. So you can start with whichever part of that you want.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot to mention how big of a role physical therapy played in my healing journey. And not just like any physical therapy. Like, I don't know if there's a certain name for it. Are you aware of like the therapy that I got at PT Plus?
Yeah, I remember. And I talked to Mark. He actually came up. I gave a talk in Milwaukee and he came up to me and he's like,
right.
I'm Lauren's physical therapist. Because he knew that I was taking care of you. So so he wasn't like breaking HIPAA or anything like that. But I'm trying to remember. Right. He did have a specific approach that he used, but I honestly don't remember the name of it. If I can figure it out, I'll put it in the show notes so people are now probably going, oh my God, what was it? What was it? But I think the big thing, well, to me, and obviously I want your perspective on this also, but it's so important that physical therapists treat the person in front of them and meet them where they are and treat them as the individual that they are, and don't have just like a cookbook approach of, I always do ABC and then 1, 2, 3. What do you think was most important in your physical therapy journey for people who can't go to see Mark at PT Plus?
Yes. The physical therapy I got was like no other physical therapy I've done. You lay on a table for 95% of the visit. At other places, you're up doing exercises, you're using an exercise ball, using TheraBands, whatever it may be, but you're doing the work. And when I would go to PT Plus, you would lay down on the massage table and they would work on the different muscles. And especially with my neck, this was, I think, the biggest thing that helped my CCI now that I think about it. They would work on my head and my neck. And then we also did the dry needling, which is just using needles. There's nothing inside the needle. There's no injection actually happening. And they're just needles, I think, similar to acupuncture, maybe a little thicker.
Yeah, they are.
Okay. And sometimes longer, I think. And they just put them in different points that do some magic. I don't know what it all is, but I believe they like release the muscles, and you could sometimes even hear the clicking of the release happening. And it was, a little painful at times, but nothing too severe, but it would make a huge difference. And sometimes I would actually ask for it because of, okay, I'm having pain in this area. I know if I get this, I'll have 2 weeks of pain-free, whatever it may be. But they were fantastic, and they knew how to handle and treat CCI as well. And I did, I forget the names of everything because it's just like, that was a hard time with all this stuff. And it's like, I'm so happy that I don't have to deal with these things anymore. So I don't even remember the names, but the device that kind of expands your neck.
Oh, the traction?
Traction. So they did traction with me in office, and then they let me know which traction device I should get at home. And it strengthens your neck. And so I did that, while I was going to PT Plus. I would go to PT Plus like once or twice a week. And when it was really severe, definitely twice a week. And that was really, really crucial in helping with my CCI. And I kept it up for a while just to help with all of my chronic pain, especially with injuries. If that came up, that would be the first thing I would do is book an appointment at PT Plus. So, yep, that was big.
Yeah, and I remember when you were doing traction and I think it was after you graduated from college, because of course you talked about how you had to leave college for a year, but you actually were able to go back and graduate, right?
Yep, I graduated 5 years after I started, so not too bad.
Hey, that's amazing, since you had to take a medical leave, which, people have to do, but sometimes people are not able to go back. So it's amazing that you were able to go back and that you were able to finish. And I remember you and your mom talking about when you were doing traction, I think it was after you graduated and you were working full time, and she would come. Didn't she come to your apartment to help you with that? Because you couldn't like do it yourself, right? Didn't you need her to help you get into the traction device?
Yeah. So the one that's over the door, you need somebody to slowly release the bag. So my mom would come. We soon transitioned it to my amazing friends that would come over because they're 5 minutes away, which was an humbling experience to have your friends help you with this weird looking traction device. But we did that. And then I got one that we actually rent it from the company, and you use it on the floor and you can do it yourself. And so I did that once I got that. So.
And asking for help, I think, is something that's challenging for a lot of people. You know, I don't know if you found that challenging or if you have any tips for people who are like, oh gosh, that sounds like a good idea, but I don't even know who I could ask for help, or I don't like to ask for help.
Yeah, I think for me, I was fine asking my parents for help, and that's like where the line kind of ended most cases. I started to get comfortable asking for help in different situations. Like I mentioned, my friends at high school, like they would help like wheel me to my classes. So I did that. Trying to think what else. My friends in college, like I mentioned, would help me with the traction device. I think I don't know what advice I have besides just like ask for help if you need it. A lot of times people just want to help and they don't know how to help. So if you're able to guide them in how that, you know, what that looks like, that works.
Okay, great. So college can be such a difficult time for people with EDS and people with POTS and or mast cell activation syndrome, which, by the way, if you have a diagnosis of that and are willing to share any details about managing that in college, that would be so much appreciated. But if you have any tips for people who are listening right now and they're like, oh my gosh, I have similar challenges. I'm in college and I don't know what to do, or I'm going to be going to college. I'm sure people would love to hear any ideas you have.
I would say the biggest thing is just like communicating with your roommate about everything that you can. I know at one point when I fractured my hip, I was on the top of my bunk bed, and so I had lofted my bed, and I would, you know, be hopping up to my bed, and my roommate looked at me one day and she was like, Lauren, just move the mattress to the floor. She's like, that's like, just move the mattress. You'll be fine. Like, and I knew it, like, we have a small room. And so I was like, it's going to be like in your space. And she's like, I can deal with it for a little bit. And so we did move it down for a while. And then it was like, oh, this is going on for quite some time. And so eventually we did move it back up because it was becoming a disruption to both of us to have the bed in the middle of our room. But I think just communicating with your roommate of like, okay, I'm struggling with these things, or like, can you go pick up my food for me? Trying to think what else. I looked out and got a handicapped room, and so I had a shower chair like literally built into my shower, and so with POTS that ended up being perfect. Just for the times when it was really hard. I wasn't using that at home like all the time, but if it's there and I'm feeling dizzy, it's not a bad idea to use it. So, you know, if that's a possibility for you to get a handicapped room, if you are struggling with POTS, it might not be a bad idea. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else. I think, yeah, just sharing with your roommate, like these are things that you might encounter, and these are things that I might ask of you if I really need something, but also not overstepping and like requiring somebody to be your caretaker. And, you know, if that's becoming the case, like let's reevaluate like what are your needs and how can those be fulfilled in a different way? Because you don't want to be dependent on a person you might have just met a few weeks ago. So, but I think just little things of like when I was injured, hey, can you carry my tray in the dining room when I'm using crutches, or, you know, if I'm not feeling up for it, can you bring food up to me? Things like that were super helpful.
Did you ever run into any problems with like people wearing perfume or, you know, doing other things that bothered you that, you know, are kind of just otherwise like normal things and you had to ask them, or mold in your dorm or anything like that?
I don't think I ever struggled with smells with my mast cells. So I was lucky in that regard. And I don't think there is much that I had to ask people to stop doing or that I was really bothered by that might be normal for other people. I think my mast cell kind of appeared in other ways with itchy skin and redness and stuff like that, but it didn't typically revolve around other people's kind of habits, I guess. So
That's
yeah.
good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And in terms of food allergies or food intolerances and eating in the dorm, that wasn't too problematic for you, or did you have to make special requests or anything?
I don't think I had to make any special requests. So I have an allergy to tree nuts, which is anaphylactic, but it's not airborne. So as long as I don't touch it, so that was just, if you're using, maybe I told my roommate, like if you're using a plate and you put nuts on it, maybe keep that like the nut plate or wash it really, really well. But I think I literally just told her, like, if you could make that the plate you use with nuts, that would be great. So that might have been like the only change I had. And she knew that like I was allergic to fruits and stuff, but it didn't affect me if she was eating a banana in the room or anything like that. So I just wouldn't, partake. But yeah.
I know I asked you to share what you wish you had done differently, and I'm going to ask you that in a minute. But I want to first share, because I'd asked you what you thought were the biggest things that helped in your healing journey. I want to share some of the things that I thought. Let you rest your voice for a minute, and then we'll talk about what you wish you'd done differently, because this flows into what you were just saying. The number one thing that I had on the list of things that I thought you did that were most critical, number one I had was realistic expectations. And I think you just exemplified that when you were explaining about your roommate. You weren't expecting your roommate to do all these crazy things that would be unrealistic, and you communicated with your roommate, which I think is really huge. And and had an open dialogue. You weren't just like, demanding or anything like that. And I know that I sensed that from you and from your parents right away, that you all had realistic expectations. You knew I wasn't going to heal you in the first visit, or even the second visit or the third or the fourth, or I don't know how many visits we had, but it was a lot. And I really just so much appreciated that I felt like we were a team. I felt like we were all on Team Lauren. And so I think that was really, really huge. To me, that's the number one most important thing. And so when a person does have realistic expectations, I feel like, they're not constantly getting disappointed, right? So like I felt like you also did a really good job of persevering and like celebrating your small wins. I remember when you were not in college, you actually started baking, right?
Yes, I started a cookie business.
Yeah. Which at the time I was like, oh my gosh, you're like baking and decorating cookies, because I'm picturing you, looking down and decorating them and stuff. And were they all gluten-free?
No. I trialed gluten-free cookies one time, and I was like, the gluten-free community is really serious, and I don't have a gluten-free kitchen. And so I did gluten-sensitive cookies at one point, which were gluten-free but used on equipment that had gluten at one point.
Right.
And I said, you know what? This is a lot of work, and I don't want to deal with people having issues. And so my cookies were typically not gluten-free, and I typically didn't eat them. So
yeah, that's amazing. And so you didn't sit home and feel sorry for yourself while you were not in college. You figured out other things to do that would bring you joy. And in fact, this was after college, but the last time that you came and saw me, you actually brought a beautiful painting that you had made. So I think it's so important how you found other things in your life that you could find joy in, even though, maybe in the past you had done other things. Because didn't you do sports in high school? Did you do sports in high school?
But I didn't do any other sports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you had danced, and now you were doing kind of art, and then you were doing the baking and things that were maybe a little bit a better match for your body, I think.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So that's good, because I think being willing to try new things and find joy in the things that you are able to do, I think is so important. Because another thing that I think that you did that was really, really critical to your success is being open-minded. I would tell you, okay, I think we should try this. And, you weren't just like immediately like, nope, not going to. And some people are, so you were very open-minded and willing to try new things, which I think is really huge. And being open to, maybe I don't need this anymore, as you mentioned earlier.
We had a lot of trust coming to you, though, even though I was your first patient, but you were just very friendly and open. And very eager to help that we were like, okay, we trust you. And I didn't know that you had EDS at that point, but I think you mentioned at one of the first few appointments that your son had POTS. And so it was like, oh, like you understand this world in a more personal sense as well. And like I said, I didn't know that you actually were experiencing a lot of the same symptoms I was. But yeah, I think we trusted you and we were open to new ideas because we didn't have other ones kind of on the table either. So
yeah. And I'll never forget. I thought you were going to tell about this when I fell.
I know what yeah.
When I was coming into the office and I made this spectacular, you were talking about slipping on the ice, and you guys were in my office and there was windows in the lobby. And so you were sitting there and you got there before I did because you came from Milwaukee. So you probably always like made sure that you had a buffer. So you got there before I did. And I parked my car and I go to get out of my car and my feet slip right out from underneath me. And I just like fall like so hard. Oh my gosh. I felt like I'd been in a car accident. And I remember like your mom and dad and you saying, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay?" And I'm saying, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine." I'm like, "I don't think I'm really fine." I actually went to the doctor after that.
Yeah. I felt so bad once we like learned that. And I think when we came out, I don't think we even knew, like, is she the doctor? Is she not the doctor? I don't think we even knew. We were just like, this woman just fell.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, that was so embarrassing. Oh my gosh.
We were off to a great start.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's another thing that you guys did that was really, really smart was, some people end up getting a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And while I was taking care of you, like you had other doctors, you had a PCP, obviously you mentioned the podiatrist, you probably still had a gastroenterologist, you had a few other doctors, but you weren't like bouncing around and not sticking to a plan. And I think that's another like really important thing that not everybody does. And you had incredibly supportive parents, but the thing that I think that you did that was really, really huge was you didn't let them run the show. As things were appropriate and you were, getting older, like you started answering all the questions and being very involved. And sometimes people, I think, maybe it is because they're thinking of themselves more as a victim or they have brain fog or I'm not really sure what all, but sometimes I find that with young people, they don't speak up very much. And I want to hear directly from the patient because nobody else knows what the person is feeling, truly knows, except the person. And then, of course, it helps if people are able to afford to come to, one-on-one appointments with someone like me. But again, that's why I do the podcast, so people can get this kind of information, even if they can't necessarily get the individualized information for themselves and get the individual prescriptions. A lot of the medications that we tried are things that other doctors can prescribe if you can find people that will do that and take the time to work with you and stuff. Okay, so now I want to ask you, what do you wish you would have done differently now that we gave your voice a few minutes to rest?
Found you sooner would have been my top answer, but I know we were pretty quick once you got the office open.
Yep.
So, you were the most crucial step in my journey. You connected me to so many resources and tools. But besides that, I think like in the beginning, when people told us stuff, we just took it like right away. Like, oh, you want me to do this? Sure, we'll do that. Like, and a doctor's telling you to do something. You think like, this is the best thing I should do. But doctors can be wrong and you might know your body better and they might not be an expert on these conditions. And so there's a lot of factors that play into it. And so when the doctor, had told me this is what you can do for POTS and that's all that there is, we later learned there are a lot of options that we can do. I'm sure the doctor is still learning more and more as we are too. And, that's totally okay. Like we're finding out so much more information about POTS each and every year. So that totally comes with it. But I think just kind of digging for answers ourselves was like what we did kind of more later in the process. Instead of just taking what everybody would say, I guess. I don't know. That might be countercultural to medicine, but I think it helps. And just testing for yourself too. Like even if somebody says Tylenol's the best, but ibuprofen works better for you, maybe take ibuprofen. Consider how they affect your liver and kidneys and stuff too. But I mean, yeah, I think that's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, doing your own research is really helpful. And I think if you are recommended to do XYZ and you decide that you're going to do X and Y, but not Z, I think it's really important when you go back for your next appointment to say, this is why I did not do that last part, or this is why I'm doing some things that you didn't mention, because then it helps them to understand where you're coming from and why you might have deviated a little bit from their plan, and that you weren't doing it, to be disrespectful or anything like that, but that you have this other information, which there's a very good chance that they don't have, that they have not discovered. So you might teach them something, which is wonderful, because then maybe they might try that on their next patient with POTS or MCAS or whatever.
Yeah. And I think with that too, there were situations we got ourselves into with doctors that were providing a negative experience at that point that still runs through my head, is more of a traumatic memory. Yeah. And I think knowing when to step away from those things of like, okay, we've tried to go for 3 visits. This is becoming too much. I'm crying every visit, feeling physical, emotional pain. This is a time to step away. And I think, we're told this is the best doctor that you can go to in the state and those kind of things. And so you think, well, we have to go, but I think there were times that we could have pulled away sooner than we did, and we just didn't know what to do. And so we didn't. But now I can see, okay, that probably wasn't the best option for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's such great advice. So for other young people that are listening right now, are there certain things that you think are signs or indicators that maybe this isn't a good fit, and so maybe they would know sooner to maybe make a different choice?
Yeah, I think there's just different phrases that a lot of us have been told that are kind of red flags in a provider of, just things of doctors or providers of any kind, to just suggesting that you're making it up, seeking attention. Anything that is along those lines is typically not a good fit. They typically don't know enough about your condition, or then deflecting into you're making it up. And those are not the case. And that was not the case in my story. And so many people with EDS or POTS or any of the comorbidities. So I think just acknowledging when those kind of red flags are happening and being like, okay, that, like, being able to, tell the difference between a doctor who wants to know your story and is, cares about you and about your well-being, and one that is just looking for a quick fix and wants to get you out of your office. And yeah,
that's huge. That's wonderful advice. Do you have any other things that you would like young people with EDS or POTS or MCAS, any other, as we're getting close to wrapping up here, anything else that you would like, especially young people, I'm thinking, that you would like them to know?
I would say think about the boundaries you're setting with your diagnosis. And I remember there were times when I was so proud to, I was running a social media account on Instagram, sharing about my health journey. And I just remember being almost proud to have diagnoses. And I think it was because it was we finally have the answer. And so in some way I was now we can seek treatment. But the lines got blurry sometimes of this is something that I identify with. And that is not what we should be what our identity stands in. That's not who I am as a person. It's a part of my story, but I don't think that having EDS defines me. And so I think setting boundaries for my own personal thoughts and mindset, but also with others and with the community. And so I think at times I got wrapped into this EDS POTS community, which is great and supportive and you feel validated, but it can also be harmful to kind of compare treatments and symptoms and kind of get I don't know. It kind of feels like a rap or something that you can get caught in of hearing too much medical stuff all the time. And you're like, well, maybe I have that and I have this symptom and it's good. Some information is good and like it definitely helps you. And I loved hearing other people's stories, but I think like setting a boundary of too much is going to be harmful and it's going to consume you. And so not that the community itself is bad, but the amount of time and energy you're putting into the community could have a negative side effect if it starts playing into your own identity and how it's affecting you.
Lauren, you are wise beyond your years. I'm telling you. that is so well said, because I feel like support groups can be so incredibly helpful when they're solution focused, but sometimes it becomes the misery Olympics. And it is true that it's important for our identity to be, I tell dancers this all the time. You don't want to be, I don't want to say just a dancer, but like, then if you can't dance anymore, now what are you? And if EDS is like this huge, huge part of your identity, well, like now they're reorganizing the criteria. So if your diagnosis changes, which could happen, it could happen to me. It could happen to any of us that our diagnosis changes. And then you have this like massive identity crisis because so much of your identity was wrapped up in that. So I think those are beautiful points.
Yeah.
I always like to finish up with a hypermobility hack. And I feel like you've already given us so many hacks, but I feel like you probably are such a wealth of information. You probably have one more hack or kind of quick win or idea for something that people can try or do or think differently about.
Yeah, I kind of already mentioned it, but I think just like you will only achieve what you think is possible is the hack. That is what I would say, because I think there were times where I put up boundaries. I remember I was in a wheelchair and my physical therapist was trying to get me out of the wheelchair. And I was like, I just can't do it. Like, I don't have the strength. And I just like lost all confidence and hope that I could actually do it. And he was like, you can do this. And he stood me up and he brought my dad in and my dad watched me and I walked across the bar. Like I was holding the bar, walking across. And 5 minutes ago, I said, I literally can't. And I remember telling a doctor, or it might have been the physical therapist, that like, I'm fine spending the rest of my life in a wheelchair. Like, I was just like, I'm kind of, this is exhausting to keep trying to walk and it's not working and it's slow. And so I was like, it's fine. I'll just spend my life in my wheelchair. And like, I had come to that point. And so if somebody said, okay, then that's it, then that's where I would stay. But like the people around me fought for me. And then I believed in myself. And so like you mentioned, the support you have is so important. And I was blessed to have a really great family and a good community of friends and you that would believe in me, and it pushed me to believe in myself. And like I said, if you believe it's possible, it's going to be possible. You're going to try your hardest to actually make that happen. And so that's my hack. That's what I would suggest. It's nothing practical, but I think that's the biggest piece of advice I would give to somebody.
I think that's super practical. Believing in ourselves is so important. I often see messages. I don't know if you've seen these, but every once in a while I'll see a message from someone and they will have gone to the doctor and the doctor didn't validate their pain, and therefore they start to question themselves. And I've done this. I mean, that's where I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so wise. Because I mean, for me I guess I was in my 40s when my health started to really, really go downhill. And I'd had problems since I was a kid, but I started to have a lot of problems in my 40s because I was doing mountain biking, which is a very bad idea for someone with EDS. And I didn't believe in myself, which was a big part of the problem. So I think that's beautiful advice. There's probably people listening to this that are saying, oh my gosh, I have this question for Lauren, or I have that question for Lauren, or why didn't you ask this? If you would be willing to share where people can find you, and I know if you get inundated with messages, you probably can't answer them all, because I would love to hear just briefly where we can find you and also what you're up to these days, because some people are probably wondering, well, why is she in Kenya? But right. If you'd be willing to share where we can learn more about you, I think that would be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I have the Instagram account that I made probably 7 years ago at this point. It's called As for Me and My Health. It's from the Bible verse, As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So that's where that came from. I no longer post. I decided that was a boundary that I needed to set. I poured a lot into the community, so I don't think I've posted in 3 years. I do check it every now and then and see if there are any messages. And so I'm totally open to responding. But yeah, that is a boundary that I decided I'm going to set by not playing a
Good
part
for you. Yeah.
in that. So, and then, yeah, what I'm doing in Kenya, I accepted a job as an art teacher. In July, I got 2 weeks notice and moved here, and it's been great. And I was working in marketing previously, so being an art teacher is a totally new career for me. But it's amazing and it's so fulfilling. And I work at a Christian school, and it's great to work with people that share the same values as me. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I never would have thought back when I first met you, all those years ago, or especially those first few years, I never would have thought that you would be teaching art in Kenya. And I think that's just so amazing. And I'm just so grateful to you for sharing your story. I know it's going to help so many people. And you also shared your story on Kevin MD. I remember reaching out to you. I don't remember how long ago this was, but I could definitely look and find out. But I remember I had somebody who just reminded me of you that I was working with, and they didn't believe that they could get better. And I reached out to you and I said, would you be willing to share a little bit of your story so that I could share it with this other patient, with your permission, of course? And you wrote something back so beautiful. I was like, wait, I don't want to just share this with one person. I want to share it with multiple people. So that's when you actually wrote the Kevin MD blog post, which we will also link in the show notes, because I think it's so important for people to have hope and to believe what is possible.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
I'm so grateful for you. And it's been great working with you. Like you said, we're on the same team. So thank you for everything you've done for me.
Yes, of course. Of course. Well, have a great rest of your night. I guess it's like late where you are. It's morning here, but yeah, you're literally halfway across the world. And it's always so lovely to see you, Lauren. And thank you so much for coming on the Bendy Bodies podcast.
Thanks for having me.
That was such a great conversation with Lauren, and I hope you feel as inspired as I do. It is so important for young people to be aware that there is hope and that there are so many things that can be done to improve symptoms of POTS, EDS, and mast cell activation syndrome. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Bendy Bodies with the Hypermobility MD podcast. You can help us spread the word about joint hypermobility and related disorders by leaving a review and sharing the podcast. If you'd like to meet with me one-on-one, please check out the available options on the services page of my website at hypermobilitymd.com. You can also find me, Dr. Linda Bluestein, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, or LinkedIn at hypermobilitymd. You can find Human Content, my producing team, on TikTok and LinkedIn at Human Content Pods. You can also find full video episodes up every week on YouTube at Bendy Bodies Podcast. To learn about the Bendy Bodies program disclaimer and ethics policy, submission verification and licensing terms, and HIPAA release terms, or to reach out with any questions, please visit bendybodiespodcast.com. Bendy Bodies Podcast is a Human Content production. Thank you for being a part of our community, and we'll catch you next time on the Bendy Bodies Podcast. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. I love getting your feedback. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you will never miss an update. We've got plenty more exciting content coming your way. And if you're looking for more episodes, just click on one of the videos on the screen right now. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.